in the handout. And this is what we support doing. We don't support striking any language, but only adding what's in bold and underlined. So you can actually see for yourself what we're suggesting. What we're suggesting is limited in nature. We don't suggest that we strike the speech and debate clause out of the Rhode Island Constitution, but simply that we make an exception to the speech and debate clause for the jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission. So we say the Ethics Commission gets to prosecute people even though the speech and debate clause protection still applies to them in all other aspects. So, for instance, we believe that the speech and debate protections should still exist for instances of the executive branch trying to interfere with the legislative branch, or an individual suing a legislator for a vote, a speech, or any of their core legislative activities. And in fact, it's our belief that by empowering the Ethics Commission to have jurisdiction over members of the Assembly in all their core legislative actions, you're actually providing them a protection. Because the Ethics Commission has a process that they go through when they hear a complaint. They vet complaints, they weed out the bad complaints against legislators, and they actually serve to protect against people's complaints that are baseless accusations. So that is where we're coming from. That is our position as an organization in Rhode Island. One of the things that has come up in beginning to advocate this position is that we have this exceptional ethics commission. It's been referred to earlier that 49 states don't have an ethics commission like ours. And Chairwoman Binder talked about that a little bit. We take it as a point of pride that we have a strong ethics commission. We think it was done intentionally on the part of the framers at the 1986 convention and the voters who ratified their work, because Rhode Islanders wanted the strongest possible ethics watchdog they could have. And therefore we see it as one of our goals is to defend the powers of that watchdog. We don't think that they're faultless by any means, but we think that it's an institution that's worthy of defense. I can answer, one of the audience members asked, I can answer, 40 states have some form of one or more ethics bodies. Some, as Tom suggested, are within the legislature. The legislature gets to police itself. In others, there are all-encompassing bodies like we have in Rhode Island that police all public officials throughout the state. In only 6 of those states are those ethics bodies created by the Constitution. Every place else they're statutory. And we think that by putting it in the Constitution, after it had existed for 10 years in a different form outside the Constitution, the voters in Rhode Island really sincerely made an effort to make an exceptional body. And we think it's an exceptional body that needs the support of the voters again.
Thank you. Senator Roney, where should we go from here?
Thank you. First, I need to make a disclaimer. I am the parliamentarian of the Senate, and but what I have to say here has nothing. Certainly is not the opinion of the Senate or any member of the Senate. And while they know I was coming tonight and probably hope I don't make a complete fool of myself, they have not in any way, in no way attempt to edit or censor my remarks. First, I think that while I disagreed with several things that were said here tonight, I did resist the impulse to leap up and say, "You lie." And I can only hope that my fellow panelists give me the same courtesy. First of all, and just very quickly, the Ethics Commission has put together a brilliant staff, and there is great support, I think you should know, in the General Assembly for the Ethics Commission. Senator Pivoleet, who's now the President of the Senate, was the prime sponsor for the legislation that created the current Ethics Commission. And I think that the advent of the Irons decision has forced the legislature to look at the fact that, as Tom pointed out, it has not adopted ethics rules or mechanisms to enforce them. They have more or less deferred to the Ethics Commission, and it is now no longer possible for them to do so. So I think you may see, and I think as members of Common Cause and others, you should be looking and expressing to the legislature the importance of it taking on its traditional role of enforcing its own ethics rules. The brilliance, and I think, of the Ethics Commission staff particularly, and they are really quite terrific, leads to my point is that Jason Grammett, great lawyer that he is, spent much of his time trying to convince the court and others that for the dismissal of the Irons complaint by the Supreme Court would lead to the end of ethics reform in Rhode Island. It's called the Chicken Little defense. Everyone's because the sky is falling. At one point or other, I thought Jason was actually arguing that if the Supreme Court dismissed the Irons case, that we'd have a revisit of the 1938 hurricane. But in any event, the sky hasn't fallen. The Republic still stands, and the hurricane hasn't come. And there is much to do and much left for the Ethics Commission to regulate in terms of the legislature. Most importantly, is the fact that the Ethics Commission can still continue to regulate disclosures, which is one of the most important formulas of ethics formulation. They can still regulate gifts, contacts by legislators with state agencies, nepotism, and campaign issues. And actually, their work with the legislature is a very small part of what the Ethics Commission does. I attend most Ethics Commission meetings, and most of their work has to do with municipal and state government officials, and not with the legislature. So there is much work for the Ethics Commission to do. The second point I want to make is that there are some very substantial problems facing the Ethics Commission before, I think, they determine whether or not they should attempt, or you should attempt, to amend the Constitution by giving them more power over the legislature. As Tom pointed out, the jury trial issue is a substantial one. The question of whether or not someone charged with ethics which has a right to a jury trial is an extremely important issue, and one that I think the Ethics Commission and perhaps the legislature is going to have to take a look at. Because it threatens, in some ways, the prosecutions under the Ethics Commission. There is also another point, and that was touched upon, Tom, too, is that in 2004, when we adopted the Separation of Powers Amendments, we also adopted, using the same language as in the federal Constitution, the Appointments Clause, which says basically that all appointments to commissions are made by the government with the advice and consent of the Senate. Well, somewhat perhaps inexplicably, the last five, including the appointments of Ms. Binder, were made by the governor, but were never submitted to the Senate for advice and consent. So I think that just as smart lawyers or good lawyers began to raise the defenses of speech and debate and the jury trial, something that we all have to face is whether or not the appointments of the 5 members appointed since 2004 who were not submitted to the Senate for advice and consent are in fact valid.